Welcome everybody to the April session of the ActionGrid Overview. These are 20-minute sessions, so a lot of product to show, not a lot of time, but just mostly to whet your appetite and get you the general overview of ActionGrid. We do have a free trial available, and we offer assistance configuring that after you install. So if you want to dive deeper and not just watch a demo, but actually get your hands on it, we really always recommend installing it right after this webinar. So just very quickly, just to set the stage, why ActionGrid, why did we build it? Our big thing is unabashedly death to the Salesforce list view. You can see here all of its challenges. I'm not going to read the list mostly. This will be recorded so you can go through, but a lot of limitations, right? It ain't no Excel. And that's what the standard is, right? That's probably the easiest application in the world to use. The row column paradigm really works, copying and pasting, moving around your data. So we want to bring that into the Salesforce environment, that ease of use, that navigational goodness that we can get out of an Excel spreadsheet, but the value of a real database like Salesforce. Now, if it could get worse, it does. On the related lists are actually worse because those have no possibility of inline editing or sorting or end users putting their own fields, 10 column limits, row limits, limits, and I'm not about limits. And then lastly, you can do a lot of what you're going to see here in ActionGrid with Salesforce reports, but the most common thing to do with a Salesforce report is what? Export to Excel. And just doesn't have that sort of richness that you're going to see here with ActionGrid. In fact, most of our customers are telling us they have abandoned Salesforce reports because they can do everything a Salesforce report can do in ActionGrid. And so that's our goal. So let's get started. If I set the stage again, I always say if you're a sales VP and you start your day and it's getting towards the end of the month and this is your cue, and you've got a long day ahead of you to spin through this, because as you click into each one of these and read and do whatever, it's going to be 7 to 8 clicks to do that, versus what you could have is an action grid where you can switch out your tabs very easily with wizards. We're going to show that right at the end, how to make some of these elements, but mostly we're going to concentrate on features for today. So here, this is a much different experience. You can't help but notice immediately color. We think color, you look at most spreadsheets and people are putting color onto their spreadsheets to call attention to their data, to drive behavior. In this case, we have a particular opportunity grid where the administrator or somebody has decided to put in conditional rules here around coloring dirty data. In this case, we've got my arch nemesis, which is the sales guy who thinks he can close deals in the past. Doesn't clean up his opportunities. And so, you can't blame them in regular Salesforce because it is arduous to have to edit that data. If you count the clicks to edit each one of those, the sales guy doesn't make it, is not going to close that deal. It's 7 or 8 clicks every time to go through each opportunity to change those, versus an action grid where you just come down here and you just change that date and say, well, maybe I've got a chance at it for April. And then, I could do those one at a time. So I've got inline editing, but the real value of ActionGrid is little subtle things like lassoing that data like you would in Excel, right? Even that is making you, 1,000% faster, right? Your 11 checkbox clicks to my single lasso. So little subtle things about this to make it more like an Excel-like experience. Now, what would you do in Excel with that? You'd take that 4/30 date and you'd paste it on down. Now, we don't quite have copy and paste yet, but we do have this action. So the other half of the action grid name is actionability, being able to take action on selected data. Now, we're not going to have time in this 20-minute session to go through all of these. I'll pause there for just a second so you can see the entire menu of actionability. I'm really looking for this one right here because I want to be efficient. I want to get this done in 2 keystrokes or less. So I'm going to do batch edit, and you'll see we even have multiple batch edit. You know, Excel has find and replace. Excel has fill down, that little feature where you can just copy the cell and paste it on down, and regular mass update, but I'm going to use fill down. It's my favorite because I get to see my data being changed right there on the screen. You'll note the little red caret in the corner. That means my data is dirty. It's been updated, but not yet committed to the Salesforce database. That does give me the opportunity to revert my change. So that's kind of why I like it. I like to see my change and do it. Now, for you folks that are real data entry, you know, really good with your data entry, you'll be pleased that we also have keyboard commands, you know. So if you wanted to do that with the Excel keyboard command, which is Control D, it'll do the same thing, and Control S will save it. So saving your changes is still pushing that data back into the Salesforce database. Now, the other things you'll see about this grid besides conditional color, by the way, you know, if you want to see where those are conditional color formatting rules. It's a simple rules-based engine. If you just put a rule in here, like, you know, a rule named Steve in the owner field, and you make that go purple or blue, I guess, in my case, and then I'll just say where the owner contains the word Steve, make it go blue, and all those rows you'll see right there turn blue. So very simple to do the rules engine, and you can do some very complex ones as well, by the way, such as you see here, my other arch enemy, which is lack of activity being logged against the opportunity. You know, I'm the CEO of a company and I have salespeople, and you know, you do not want to get an email from me that says I see a lot of red or a lot of yellow in your opportunity here, believe me. Now, the grid has some other kind of functionality that will help people in general, and that is, we'll talk about filters. So you'll notice the little filter icon, so very easy, much different than the Salesforce experience to just check boxes to do those. Date filters are intuitive as well, so if I needed to say this, you know, this month, those are all there in a menu versus if you're familiar with the Salesforce list views, that's not there. You have to go look them up from a website. Now, that it's all about filtering and segmenting that data. So especially if you're doing reporting with ActionGrid. So another thing you can do here is you'll see that you might want to group your data. So you can just group your data quickly. You can either filter it or group it. So in this case, I filtered everything, or grouped everything, sorry, by a particular close date right here. And then I see, you know, I got the 20 deals and the 11 deals and so forth. If I wanted, I can even change this around and focus the attention on the actual sales reps themselves. So I got Ryan and Shelly and Steve going on here. And then within there, I can see what's going on with Ryan. He's got 6 deals at 99 grand because ActionGrid is also always subtotaling. Anytime we see money, we think, you know, what's the funnest thing to do but count money, so we might as well just do it for you. So no work to do. If you have a numeric column, you're going to see it's just going to sum always at the bottom and give you grand totals at the bottom, whether you group or not, by the way. So you'll see here at the bottom of any numeric column, you're going to see that number. Some columns don't make sense to group by, so you can turn that feature off as well. So before we leave this screen, and I'm going to do a quick time check. Before we leave this screen, let's talk about looking at more complex uses of data, and that is looking at the all-in-one screen. So ActionGrid has cross-object capability, meaning we can see everything from the one screen. Meaning, if I go down here to my Denver Broncos, for instance, with this reading pane technology, kind of taken from a page out of Microsoft Outlook, let's just say, what you can see here is I'm looking contextually. I've selected this row, Denver Broncos, and contextually it is showing the related lists of that selected row. So if I go down to somebody else, Colorado Rockies, let's say, I would see some different rows of data. Now, that reading pane serves numerous purposes. First off, it's the holding place for related lists. And if you want a new related list, you just simply press that little plus sign and you say, I want my notes, my quotes, and whatever else on there, notes, tabs, or something like that. And these would be your related lists that would get placed on there. So if you had some quotes underneath there, they would just show up in your related list. And we're going to show this in a second, just other ways to configure and put fields on the grid. Very intuitive to do that with this little menu here, all on one screen, by the way. So the other use of related lists, of the reading pane, is, of course, these reading panes are all editable as well. So if you save this grid and it's in the edit state, everything's editable, so you can edit any of those rows, or you can add in place. You can certainly add more rows into this thing if you like, sell them 100 of those things and save. So you've got all of that, what you would kind of expect in a spreadsheet environment, okay? Some other use cases of reading panes is now, the grid is great. We love the grid, but we've had a lot of customers who have just tremendously large amount of data. And so they have come up with the idea, and we have implemented it, to do something like this, where you can see the data both in a grid, but also in a little form type layout. Now, this is all done with field sets. So it's configurable, 100% configurable. You can add fields, subtract fields, super easy to do that. You can even actually see data from other objects. So in this case, I wanted not just look at the opportunity, but I wanted to look at the actual account detail. So that's not this row. That's actually this ID, the Denver Broncos record, being shown here and making it editable at the same time. So if I can say, if I can do something there and save it, I've added value because I didn't have to navigate up to a different screen to do that. So think about using ActionGrid in a variety of ways that way. And then I'll show the last one. Well, chatter, of course. You can chatter right from the window as well. You can batch chatter as well, so you can chatter somebody a message right from here. If you're not getting it, the idea is to never leave the grid. Of course, you're gonna go into your forms sometimes, but the idea is to try to put as much as we can, much functionality on the grid itself. Okay. Last use case I'll show for the reading pane here will be when you're doing task management. So you'll see that, pardon me, you'll see that we have this multi-tab concept, and I've decided to put everything in one place. I can use ActionGrid as a dashboard, or use it as a tab, or use it as a related list, and we'll finish up showing the related list here in a second. But I like using my ActionGrid and my reading panes to really see the notes of my calls and so forth. So if I'm importing email, I can see right here, and these are all editable, completely editable, to do that as well. So let's look at a couple of other use cases of ActionGrid. As I mentioned, you can use ActionGrid as a regular old top-level tab, but you can also use ActionGrid as a related list. And I'm going to show right at the end, in the last minute of this webinar, I'm going to show how I made this. I can make this in 3 clicks of the mouse. Depends on if you count the Salesforce work that has to go with it. But I can convert every related list, all of your related lists, into an ActionGrid almost instantly. And when I do so, what value have we created? Well, first off, let's say activity management. You're being a good CRM citizen, you're linking all your email, you're logging all your calls. That's all fine and dandy. But what Salesforce forgot to do is give you a way to get back that data. And I always joke here and I say, seriously, you're going to want me to spin through all of these activities. If I'm looking for a particular email or some note that I wrote, and I'm going to do this whole thing where I open up each one, No way, no how am I going to do that. That's ridiculous. So what I'm going to do instead is use ActionGrid and my reading pane to spin right through those records. Spin right through those records. I can sort those. I could find, I could filter those on the fly if I'm really just searching for that one email. I know I'm the one who wrote it, so I can use all that right there on the related list. And then when that all fails, I can just use search. Novel concept, being able to search your grids. And so here, if I search on the word Super Bowl, you see here I'm searching within context, contextually, of this object, activities that are linked to this account, and it searched not just the subject, but it also searched the body, because it's actually using Salesforce's API, its actual search engine to do that. So a couple of other use cases there for related lists, of course. If you're adding in place, quickly adding rows of data. Like I said before, if you're using your reading pane, various ways to use your reading pane. And then I always kind of pause here again one last time to show actionability. Because there are some really nifty actionability items here. We don't have time for a lot here, but I'll just quickly go through a few. And if you're going to watch the recording, you can replay this or something like that, since I am going super fast. I realize that. So again, we lasso some data, and what actions can we take on that data? A couple of things. We can batch add tasks. I could add a task to all these guys, and I could say, send, congrats. I'll make it assigned to the record owner in case there's multiple record owners there. I can assign it to a certain person as well, and I'll say, call, and I'll say Super Bowl, congrats, call, something like that. And whatever. And what that's going to do is that's going to have created tasks for each of those 5 people. Now, that batch add is generic. That can work for any object. I just show tasks because everybody seems to use Salesforce tasks. And if we were to look at any of that data here, right, and we can look here at the tasks in the reading pane, and we can say, yeah, there's that call that you just logged. And if we go up to the next one, Super Bowl congrats, and believe me, there's going to be 5 of them in there. I also like the batch adding of email, batch sending of email, but it's a little bit more than that now, because now I think we might need to even relabel this thing, because it's really batch communication. And so we labeled it send email, but it's way more than that now. We have integrations to Pardot, Pardot Engage, you name it, we've got it. If you want to send a batch email to all those people, you'd simply send a batch email, choose a template. That's a Salesforce template to do that. I'm not going to do that one. You can also batch SMS people using an integration that we have with SMS Magic, which is another commercial app exchange partner. And if you've got texting and mobile numbers, you can just come up here and batch SMS text those people, and it'll do it just like it's a batched email to do that. But for speed, I'm going to have to move on. So 1 minute to go. So I want to show last just a few configuration things and show how we kind of did all of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to a different system here, a system that's really clean, has no ActionGrid previously installed on it. So here we have the same kind of account record, and we're down in the doldrums here with our related lists, and you can see already I've got my 5-row limit, and I'm just really hurting here in this environment. So what can I do? With ActionGrid, I can go to this ActionGrid setup, and we go to this object. We go on a per object basis, and you'll see all of these little wizards that will make either top-level Salesforce tabs, or in this case, I'm going to make a multi-tab out of the related list. And what this is going to do, we'll count the clicks here. 1. In this case, I have multiple layouts, so it's going to be a second click than normal. So 2 clicks to do it. And what it's done is it's made a Visual Force page out of my related list. It's learned my system. Whether you have custom objects or anything, it's smart. It knows how to read those related lists. And if I could press the page layout, but since I've got it here, I'm just going to go edit layout. And you'll see what we've got there is a visual force page that just got created right there, AG NFL account. And if I just drag it into its location here, like so, and I don't count those as a click because those are really Salesforce work here. Make that a little bit wider, and I save that. What you'll see in those 2 clicks, 2 ActionGrid clicks and 2 more Salesforce clicks, you'll see I got a perfect rendition of the related lists that were on that page. No matter, again, if you've got related lists or weird custom columns, anything, it's a perfect rendition of that. So if you look at my orders, which is unique here, I guess I don't have any orders, but you can see that those are all created in a tab interface in the perfect order of those tabs as well. So I'm going to take a breath there for 1 second and start answering questions because that's about the end, although we typically missed one little part in the cross-object stuff. So I will take that extra minute to do that. I can go here. So one thing I didn't cover is the last piece of configuration is what can you do with these toolbars, things like that. So, first off, you can hide the toolbars if you think ActionGrid looks too complex. That's fine to do that. Little subtle things as well that are some of you that I see are on the line or customers. This little thing is really useful if you've got big data and you're on a related list or a regular list. You can expand all and just explode that list into your full screen mode. So now you've got a lot more real estate to work with. So that's a nifty feature. And then, like I said, if this looks too complex, just hide these toolbars from people. And when you save your views, the way this all works is with a concept called the save view. So we go over here to the configure, and you'll see here we have all the fields that are available. We can even go up to other objects, so full cross object, go down as much as you want, go up through the table structure as much as you want. In this one, you can go 5 tables up and 1 table down to show you related lists. In fact, we can actually go further down now with grandchild objects and so forth. So just wanted to show that for the configuration and make sure that's on the video. So, all right, so question time. Let's see what we got here. Somebody wanted to know if ActionGrid can do cross-object filtering. Okay, so cross-object filtering in my vernacular means maybe searching for a related list or something like that. So some kind of data that's in the related list. So the way that ActionGrid does cross-object filtering is you use this feature called related column, which is nifty little feature. You can take, for instance, the opportunity products. That's the child of opportunities, okay? And what ActionGrid does is it flattens that data out. So in the natural, right, this data looks like this, right? If I look at the Denver Broncos here, I'm going to see, what, six or 7 rows of data. So that's how the data appears in the natural. But what ActionGrid can do is it can flatten that data into a comma-separated list. That's both cool from a visual standpoint. You can tell here, does this row have any data, this Colorado Rockies row? It doesn't. You don't have to spend your time searching to see if it does. You can also put conditional color on those as well. But to answer the question, the most useful thing of those that related column feature is the ability to filter on that child data. Okay, so in this case, if I wanted to say I only want to find opportunities that have an iPhone 6 quoted on those. It's going to narrow down that list so that only iPhone 6s are in that list, as you can see. I find it even more useful, though, when doing queries such as maybe something like this. Find me all contacts that aren't in a particular campaign. So I might do something like this where I'll put the campaign members object here. Now when I'm doing my marketing, I'm doing this all the time. And I say, you know, find me all the people that are not in a particular campaign. So I do that does not exist. And I say, you know, find me the, you know, Dreamforce 15. Find me all the people that are not in Dreamforce 15. And then I'll do something like batch add them to the campaign and make sure I get that problem resolved, right? So then I use a batch add campaign member and just set that up like so. Now my query should return no records because everybody's in there. If I clear that. So that's a little bit longer answer than I think it needed. There's another question. Can you export the new view? So anything in ActionGrid can be exported. So if you change your columns around, hopefully you understood that's all, you know, drag drop to the columns. You can even relabel your column headers now. By the way, you can relabel your column headers. You can do multi-column sorting. So the nature of the question there was, let me clear this one, just so I don't screw up my next demo. The nature of the question, I think, was, can you export this view? So just to be clear, yes, you can export the view, and the view is going to retain all of those characteristics. So even if you know, relabel this column and call it, you know, date, something like that, date, and then you export that data, that column header, all the positions of the columns are going to be exported. So the way you do that is you just select all the data, and then you say export to, and you export to Excel or CSV or something like that. You can even print the page too. You know, Salesforce doesn't have a print option, surprisingly, so we put that in there. If there's anything else on this screen, now would be the time to ask if anyone wants to see a particular use case, you know, such as merging to Conga invoices or anything else on that list. Looking around for questions there. Okay, I usually like to end these pretty quick, so I'm going to have one last call for questions and give it about 30 seconds, and then we're going to call it a day. All right then. Thanks everybody. Make sure, let's see, get my slide up again. Just to finish up, there's some contact information for you. We do have a 15-day free trial. It's a fully functional trial. What happens after you install the trial is we'll try to schedule a meeting for you, try to give you a little coaching and training just to make sure you're doing things fast, so you don't have to bang your head learning ActionGrid, although the documentation is really robust and the videos are robust as well. So thanks again everybody, and have a good rest of the weekend. Thanks, bye.